Learn from stars and heroes of the Dubai business world. Welcome to the Dubai Business Podcast, produced by Jayed. Now, here's your host, Lucas Krejcia.
Nelio Leone is one of my favorite business people to speak with. He's so passionate about what he's doing and he's really good at it. He led the growth at Kareem, a unicorn startup that got acquired for $3 billion, and Washman, one of the cool laundry startups in the region. In 2019, Nelio founded his growth marketing agency Urban Monks, where he helps companies all over the world to grow. In this interview, Nelio describes growth tips he has learned during his career, as well as tips to succeed on LinkedIn. And most importantly, principles companies should follow during these pandemic times. But let's start with what really is this growth marketing.
It's probably like a new way of doing marketing that combines a cross-disciplinary upskilling process. It's called the marketing T-shape, that basically comprises a whole set of skills that go from front-end coding to launching ads to optimizing funnels to CRO to sales techniques. So that's what I'm really into right now. It's more this a very very pluridisciplinary marketer that I find very interesting, because you can then pretty much adapt to any sort of business, to any sort of request, to any sort of organization. You pretty much know what kind of strings to pull and where you should be focusing on.
Okay. Why I'm asking is because it's kind of a buzzword, right? So people are misusing it, you can say, in many ways. So when I say I'm a growth marketer, what should I know to kind of be able to use the title?
So when you're a growth marketer, so there's a lot of different skills that you need to work on, and that's the beauty of what growth hacking is. Is that it's very cross-disciplinary. So it goes from rapid experimentation to really to analytics, to creativity, how to build how to build creative. There's a lot of things that goes into, but it's focused on three pillars. One is marketing and psychology. Another one is data and experimentation, and another one, it's all about tech tools and automation. So that's where a growth marketer really comes in. It's because he's like really good at marketing psychology, he's really good at data experimentation, and he's really good at the tech tools and automation. So then every growth marketer kind of specializes or is much better, because he comes from a background where is better in one of these three, these three areas versus the others. So yeah, and I think it's very interesting because it's an upskilling process. You always need to gain better knowledge on these three areas.
Okay. Do you think that given it's kind of the multidisciplinary or cross-disciplinary, let's say, position or title, do you think someone on a junior or entry level can be actually a growth marketer?
You could be like a junior growth marketer, yes. And then it's always like the difference, right? There's like marketing. It's the same in the traditional industries. There's marketing managers out there that have 20 years of experience, and they're still like marketing managers or senior marketing managers or marketing director or senior brand manager, whatever you want to call them. And then you have like in smaller companies that, marketing manager is someone that has like probably, 2-3 years of experience. So it's not really the title that you need to focus on. It's more the experience of the person has had and the project that the person has been involved with.
Are you looking for learning something new while working from home? Sign up to one of our digital marketing workshops. In a few days, you can learn how to launch Facebook and Instagram ads or how to advertise your business in Google search. Head to jayed.co to find out more.
You're listening to the Dubai Business Podcast, produced by Jayed.
Okay, makes sense. Is it really just thing for startups, or do you think it's the way every company should now start thinking about marketing?
Oh yeah, totally. I think it started in the tech community, in the sort of like tech ecosystems, etc. But it's basically something that now every company will eventually, I believe, will eventually like switch to, because even bigger companies. So think about it. Even like the L'Oreal's, the P&G, the whatever, the Estee Lauder, the big groups, um, they went from an economy of undefined growth, because they all they needed to do was just like opening new markets, to then economies where it's a lot of optimization, a lot of like understanding new channels, where you need that growth and that experimentation process. I think they'll get to it. Um, but yeah, it takes time, right? Because for bigger companies, if you look at the data right now, only so if you think about it, 86% of beauty companies that are active on e-commerce and that are actually distributed on e-commerce, 86% of them are niche brands that are digital native brands. They're D2C brands. So it means that the L'Oreal, the Procter & Gamble, the Estee Lauder, this represents what? It represents like 14% in the e-commerce space. So they will catch up eventually, because they're very retail focused, and bigger companies, especially in the consumer market, they're extremely either distributor focused or retail focused. So at the end of the day, you don't require that sort of rapid experimentation skills, because it's more aligning internal stakeholders towards an activation, rather than really having the ability to experiment a lot. You basically do one launch every probably 6 months, whereas growth marketer, given the nature of the rapid experimentation that you can have digitally, you can probably do this, and you can do like a launch every week.
Okay, you're speaking a lot about this rapid experimentation. If I'm new to this, can you explain me what do you mean by that?
So rapid experimentation, it means simply that you have different initiatives that you can that you can quickly iterate them on a weekly basis, where you can have a certain amount of tests in a certain amount of period, that will give you data signals on something that you would like to know, understand more. That will give you a better understanding of the trends, of the business, of where the revenue is generated. This is what rapid experimentation ultimately is the ability to test, to have small experiments that will give you a clear insights about how the market is reacting.
Okay. And is there, what do you say, is it happening on weekly basis, or there's no such a frame like that?
No, in general, like the way we do it, we make it happen on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, depending on the industry, depends on the sales cycles, depends on the business. But I think bi-weekly, like between weekly and bi-weekly, is the sweet spot. The way I've been working with a lot of startups, a lot of tech companies, as well, like very big companies, and the way we structure our rapid experimentation process is very simple. Is that we pretty much crunch the data on a Sunday morning or Monday morning for you in Europe. Then on Monday or like Sunday afternoon, we pretty much get, based on the data that we gathered, we conceive new type of experiments, and then we get like 2 to 3 days to once we evaluated which kind of experiments can be done in 3 days, can be executed in 3 days, we give ourselves I would say 2 to 5 days, depending on the organization, how fast it goes, to implement a different set of tests, and then we give like another 3 to 5 days experiment. So this in total is like around like around 14 days, so 2 weeks, and it gives you a glimpse. I'll give you an example. So, for instance, let's say that you have a company that is selling, I don't know, whatever, that is selling whatever products. So on the first day of the week, we pretty much are in a position that the week starts with data. The first 2 hours of your meeting should be all around data. So hey guys, based on the experiments we did last week, or based on this analysis that we did on this specific cohort of customers, we realized that these customers are very reactive to this type of products. Or if it's like more, I don't know, if like product based, it's like, okay, we've seen that this product portfolio is really declining. And which is weird because given that it's summer, this product portfolio should be going super fast. So there's something that we're doing wrong. Let's test it. So then we, based on these insights, we just started saying, okay, so if we were to get this product portfolio to increase, what could we do? And then we're like, okay, maybe it's not advertised enough, so probably we need to spend more money to advertise it on it. Or maybe it's hard to find, or maybe it's not worded the right way. So then we said, okay, these are the three experiments. The first one, it's going to be, let's put more money in advertising. Perfect, we're going to do that. Second, we are going to make it more available, either on our website or whatever that is. And then third one, we are going to change the copy because we think that the way it's the way it's worded right now and the copywriting behind it doesn't really make the user understand the value of this product. So we're going to test the three, and then we're going to see, based on a cohort of customers, let's say 100 customers, we are going to see what has moved the needle faster. And if we see that it just was a matter of like spending more money, then okay, then that's what we're gonna focus on the next week. So we're gonna optimize the advertising and so on.
Nice, amazing. Okay, but to be able to do this, I need a certain amount of data already, right? So I guess I need to accumulate some data first. So it's not for really small companies, this approach.
Not really, because imagine you can run it. So I run experiments on a weekly basis as well on my LinkedIn, for instance, and I don't have like I have probably like 7,000 followers and maybe 100 likes per post consistently, maybe like between maybe 70 to 100. So it's not like significant amount of data. It's like it's very basic. I don't have like 70,000 followers, and I don't have like 700 likes on my post.
Yeah.
So I still do experimentation. So I say like, okay, what type of content is working? And based on this experimentation, I understood what content is perfect for LinkedIn. And because I A/B tested, I just try sometimes to post, is it time that matters? If it's not really time, is it content? If it's content, what type of content? And I just got to the idea that it doesn't really, and this is like maybe 5 months of experimentation where I got really serious about it. I realized that it's not really about the time, and it's not really about which tag you put, etc. All these are just like additional thing that can boost your organic reach. But what really matters is the type of content. And there is one specific type of content that systematically trends.
Okay. Do you want to reveal which one is it?
Yeah, it's basically like it's very simple. It's like it's a type of content that gives super immediate actionable value. So this is what I realized from experimenting since 5-6 months on LinkedIn. And again, I don't have a lot of data to play around with.
Okay, so super is an actionable, has super actionable value.
Yeah, so you don't need a lot of data to get super actionable insights. Because some weeks at the beginning it's very hard because sometimes you don't understand what it is. You don't understand what variable is killing your results, or what variable is like really boosting the results. Sometimes you get like, I don't know, results that are impressive with very, very small amount of effort. And sometimes when you put like a lot of effort because you think you understood something, then you realize that actually you're back to square one because it has no result from something that you were sure that it was that you were acting based on something that you've noticed before.
Yeah, got it.
Does it make sense, or is it too theoretical?
Maybe if you can throw some example, because while I can imagine as I'm playing with my LinkedIn, but maybe someone who's starting with it might be still not sure what do you mean, what should be that actionable content they should put together.
But so you mean on LinkedIn, or like you mean actionable content?
Now as we touch on LinkedIn, yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. So I'll just give you this example of rapid experimentation that I did on LinkedIn to really make sure to understand what kind of content really trends. And it took me some time to do it, and I had to interview people that either follow me or people that like some of my content. And I actually brainstormed with them. I was like, so if you were to look at this content, would you actually like it? Would you like share it? Would you actually, I don't know, whatever. So after doing
wait,
some different...
Sorry, Neil. You interviewed people who follow you to find out what's working on LinkedIn. Wow.
Yeah. So what I did is pretty much I started with a very specific framework where I started posting on different days. I said maybe time matters. So I started posting on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, like every day, to see pretty much what kind of reach would get. And it was clear that you get the bigger reach that you would get. It's on a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Like these are the three peak days where you get most of the traction. And in general, it happens in two breaks. One I noticed was between 9 and 11, and another one it's between 1 to 3. So the rest, it's pretty much a dead zone. And you see and I've put some trackers to give data signals to see how the reach would increase based on the timing. And it was clear that it was really timed. So LinkedIn optimized it for a specific time frame. And it's basically the time frame where all the users are more engaged on the platform.
Okay.
So then once I understood the timing and I played around with the timing, then I started saying, okay, but why some content performs so well and some other doesn't really perform really well? So then I started checking all the type of content that was out there, and we really geeked out on this. I had a last intern coming from Oxford University. He was a data science major. And basically we started scraping more than 30,000 type of content from LinkedIn influencers to understand what type of content, like if we saw patterns on content that was trending or not. Mm-hmm. And then we clearly saw that there was type of content that were trending, and then we tested based on this analysis that we've done. The results were very good, and it became clear what type of content we needed to build, which was, again, very actionable tips, something that people, as they scroll, they would be like, oh, actually, I could implement this. Oh, I could use it now, or I could really make use of this right now. So then once we get into the actionable tips or personal philosophy, so these are the two type of content that constantly trend, or personal stories. So once I had these three buckets, then I started building like a sort of small content calendar. And once I built the content calendar, I realized that there was some content that was consistently trending and some content that was like, not really. So then I started doubling down on what I saw patterns in. And that was like very actionable content that is basically either tools or basically actual techniques that people can implement, where you walk them through step by step.
Okay, so tools or techniques which people can start using right after reading your post.
Yes, or personal stories. So but that comes when you have more of a following. When you start having people that are more engaged in your content, then you can reveal a very personal aspect of yourself. Meaning, I don't know, the day I got promoted, or the day I got fired, or the day I don't know, whatever.
Anyways, your donkey story from
my donkey. Yeah, exactly. Like my donkey stories from when I was a kid and I used to be a promoter in Greece. So these are all type of content that that I've seen the consistency trend, and this just came as a byproduct of the experimentation process, which again doesn't need a lot of data. It just needs a systematic way of pulling out that data and action it.
Okay, that sounds really nice. All right, let's move away from LinkedIn. I would like to take a look at the pandemic marketing playbook you've written, and it was one of the content which has pretty tremendous response on LinkedIn. And you're mentioning 5 principles basically businesses should follow during these pandemic times. Shall we look at them one by one?
Yeah, definitely. So the pandemic marketing playbook, it's more of a generic, really guideline on how people should think of marketing during this pandemic. And the reason is because I realized that a lot of companies, and especially a lot of my clients, they would still have, and a lot of founders I worked with, they still have the same type of framework of the pre-COVID. And they are really up. So the pre-COVID scenario was very clear. So especially in the tech ecosystem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the tech system, in the tech scene, it was very clear. So you had a company, you started going on the ads manager the day you need to market. You start spending significant amount of marketing dollars in advertising, and your VCs, your venture capitalists or your investor would subsidize that spend. Because that spend, most of the time, the unit economics are not there, meaning that those ads that you're spending, they're either not profitable or they're not like bringing any value. And it's very risky to stick to that strategy, simply because I've seen a lot of companies that as soon as you turn off their ads manager, they don't have a business anymore. So what kind of real like sustainable business you can claim to have when it's completely dependent on your ads manager? So that's where really this whole this whole pandemic marketing playbook came from. Because as soon as COVID-19 hit us really hard, what you really see, the first thing that was hit was all this like Facebook scheme that, okay, you need to market your business, go on Facebook, start running ads. Well, ads started becoming very expensive because simply people don't buy products anymore, yet they scroll those products. So you have very, very high CPA or cost of acquisition, but then you don't have, so what happens is that you end up, if your customer was like, it would cost you $1 to be acquired pre-COVID, during COVID, that would be like 1.5. And when it's on one customer, I mean, it's fine, 50 cents is nothing. But if you leverage it on 9,000 customers, 10,000 customers, and so on, then it starts to become very significant in terms of spend, in terms of additional spend, especially in a climate where venture capitalists, they're not willing to burn money anymore as they did pre-COVID. So they're looking more for businesses that have a clear path to profitability, and businesses that the burn time is much shorter. So that's why COVID-19 forced a lot of businesses to really focus on their organic growth, which is a good thing, because organic growth is actually the most significant growth a business could ever achieve. Performance marketers, they get like super, they get super hyped and psyched when basically there's an organic marketer that would come into play and would get you the same results without spending $1. So that's exactly where COVID-19 is forcing us. And that's, as Urban Monks, as my agency. So now we're 5 people, and we were born as a remote company, so like a digital-based company. We started testing a lot of that. So a lot of focused on building content, building that top of the funnel, building that organic growth. And we've seen some spectacular results during this COVID-19 period because of that. Simply because what we realized is that the CPMs were extremely low. There was a drop around like 30%, which historically, if you check like the advertising market, it never really happened, or it never really happened from one day to the other. So it means people are still using the social media, but more to consume content and to consume media, not really actual to buy.
So this is what you're calling that people are in browsing mode, not in a buying mode. Is that right?
Exactly. So the first principle of the marketing of the pandemic marketing playbook is really this: is to make sure that your brand is super browsable. And by browsable, it means that you're not like those salesy brand that is like there's always on deal mode, but a brand that is really providing value. And actually, that is like very interesting because then that's where content comes to play, and building a sustainable content machine on top of your ad system, top of your ad engine, increases that ad efficiency by 3x easily, because people are just more accustomed to interact with you, to seeing you. You're part of, like, you're not more into the stranger danger zone. You are really more into, oh, I see that person, or I see that product everywhere. Oh, I saw, like, oh, I see their page, they're doing really cool stuff. Like, so when then you're advertising to them, then they're going to be much more likely to buy you, rather than because they consumed already some content. So what's very important in right now in COVID-19 is really to focus on those soft conversions. So focus on building. If you don't have a system right now of soft conversion, build it right now. What does that mean? Build actionable content on top of your funnel that makes your brand recognizable. Focus on your brand identity. Focus on everything that is really top of the funnel, because now it's the time to do it.
Okay. But if I'm small business and from day to day, I lost most of my clients and I need to make sure I keep my lights on. Do you think it's the right time to focus now on building the content, and this is what will save my company?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is the time to be there for your customers, right? So this is the first thing this is the first question that I consistently get when I tell this to small businesses. And actually, small businesses are really the ones that need to focus the most, because up until you don't develop like a recognizable and remarkable brand, you don't have a small business. You don't have a business. So how you build that is by staying very close to your existing customers. So your 100% focus should be on churn. So churn, like managing churn and being extremely focused on churn right now is the most important part. But what does really managing churn really mean, right? So managing churn simply means understanding how you can stop the bleeding, how you can create something so valuable for your existing users that these users, they would not leave the door, they would stick to you. So of course, this is not applicable to all sort of businesses. And during a pandemic, most business, like a lot of businesses that do not meet like very like pains, that do not solve pains, that they just solve nice to have, they're going to go out of business. Like, there's, unfortunately, it's the law of survival right now. What really is going to survive are all the businesses that really solve a pain. Now, if your business is really solving a pain, then you need to understand your customer, your existing customers. So you can reverse engineering, building that brand and that content and that overarching structure before you turn on the ads again from your existing customers. That means just put it in your schedule. As soon as you get in the morning, take like 2 hours to call your most hardcore clients, or the clients that are with you since the beginning. Ask them as many questions as possible. If you want a structured approach, then think of a structured approach. Think of like the question that you really want to ask them. Sometimes I would advise you even not to have a structured approach. Just call them to have a random conversation and to really understand what kind of pain they're into. That is not necessarily related to your laundry business, to your fashion business, to your smoothie business, or whatever that is. But what pain can you actually solve for them that is within your capacity, within your scope, or within a partner that you can bring on board to help solve these issues? And of course, you can't solve everybody's problems. But what I'm saying here, try to look trends and patterns. So if there is a clear trend, a clear pattern that all your customer base has, that, I don't know, like they're getting bored at home. This is like their biggest concern. If you're a laundry business, then the next time you send them laundry, send them a kit for their kids, so that because they're all families and they all have kids at home, if they have this pain point of having kids running around all the time, then you send them like a free coloring book or whatever. This is a way to manage churn. This is a way to really care about your customers. And not only, but then you can reverse engineer what they're actually telling you. If you see trends and patterns and you know that, I don't know, like there's a specific pain that they're having, then you can build content on top of the funnel that addresses that specific pain.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, taking again the example of the kids, if your kids are driving you crazy, then I'm going to start driving content from my blog, from my whatever page or whatever, or email list. I'm going to have content like, your kids are driving you crazy, question mark. Here, what all the other, I don't know, company X customers are doing. So you make them feel part of a community. So I don't know if you're like,
got it.
If you're, you get it, right?
Yeah, but let's pause here for a second, because I think it's really important for everyone kind of to understand practically what do you mean by it. So you said, okay, call every morning, call your clients, and let's make it a bit harder for you. Let's say I'm accounting company, so something not really sexy.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm accounting company and I'm calling my customers. What should be the things I ask them? How are you? No one is really well today, right? So what should I ask them?
So for accounting company, so there's a distinction, right, that you need to do. So one is either it's B2B or B2C, because not all companies are created equal. So on the B2C, when you have like, and that's where I can really add a lot of value because of my experience and because of the current work I'm doing. It's really on the B2C side. That's where you might focus really on understanding your core customers, etc. On a B2B side, you need to understand better how the conversation goes. And the way we're doing it, we have some B2B businesses that are working really well. What we're doing right now, we have a clear automation outreach system to outreach to all prospective clients or existing clients to really understand what their pain at the moment are. So for instance, I'll get you an example. We're working currently with a company that, with a tech company based out of Canada, that is focusing on digitizing all certification for universities. They came to us and they said like, no, like guys, this is like the right moment for us to go to market, because everybody now needs to digitize documents, because it's very difficult for them to like to send paper, transcripts, etc. And then we started understanding that, okay, let's validate that and let's try to understand more about their customer base. So we took their initial customer base, which were like the initial 10, 15 clients they had, and we started really talking to them, saying, okay, so what are the kind of challenges that you have right now? What kind of pain do you really need to solve that? And we really understood that even if they felt that, okay, digitizing was an urgent priority for everyone, then when we started talking to institutions, well, they were not really thinking about this at this moment. They were more focused on something else, which was digitizing the content of the courses.
Okay.
And digitizing the content of the courses was a priority, and was eventually a priority, and then would be digitizing the certifications. And so what we did for them, we understood that companies that we could not target, and we would not start targeting companies that do not. So one criteria to discriminate ICPs, so ideal customer profiles, to reach out them, was that are they already digitizing their content? So if they are digitizing their content, then they're much more ready to also digitize their transcripts. But most of them that we reach out to, they were not even digitizing their content. So they were still so far away from us that they were not even like, we could not go after all sort of universities. We were just like, we just had to focus on one specific type of universities that as a criteria, they already have to digitize your content. And then the idea for the future is that we would check all the blogs and everywhere where there is a conversation about digitizing content, so how to bring courses online, etc., and then start educating that market, saying, hey guys, by the way, now that you're digitizing your content, do you know that you should also digitizing the transcript? Because otherwise, all the content these guys are consuming is not going to worth a penny. And that's going to be very relevant for them. So in the end, we saw like so when we went from like a super broad targeting, like all universities in the world that with a minimum of, I don't know, 3,000 students, to a more targeted approach based on the conversation we had with the 10 initial customer clients they had, we all understood that the 10 different clients they had all in common is that they were all digitizing their courses. So that was a factor that before we never really thought of, because we thought that all universities were qualified for a solution, which was wrong.
And you found out that from 10 conversations with customers?
From 10 conversations with clients, we understand two things. So the first thing, we understand like a bunch of things, to be honest. So we reviewed the tagline, even for the company, so the value proposition. So meaning that before, I think their value proposition was converting digital for institution. Like it was very broad and it was not very focused, to something very clear that actually came from a conversation we had with a client, which was paper is not an option anymore. And that really made the cut, because that is so compelling, and it didn't come from us, it come from their mouth, from the client. The client said, well, we are really happy about having this company on board right now because paper is not an option anymore. And that became our horse battle. It simply became like everywhere on the site now it's going to be like, hey, paper is not an option anymore. That's what we do. We convert everything that is like paper to non-paper because paper is not an option.
Got it. I'm asking specifically about this 10 conversation because sometimes companies or business owners feel, you're telling me like to speak with customers, to do some research, etc., etc. I don't have time for 100 phone calls or something like that. But what you're saying, you called 10 clients, right? And you were able to figure out to reshuffle maybe a little bit your strategy.
I'll give you another example. Okay, this is another example that we've done at Washman when I was head of growth there. So back then, there was something. So imagine there was a cohort of users that were existing users, and they were very high-paying customer, and it was like a golden cluster. So this golden cluster, there were like all these Jumeirah Janes, moms at home. They used to have like huge bulk of laundry, and every order was like going way beyond the average order value that we would have across the market. So what happened is that we didn't understand why over months this segment was churning dramatically. And now whether it's a pandemic or whether it's like normal market scenarios, it's the same. It really came down to understand why these people were churning. And we thought of everything. So we thought of like, okay, maybe these people they left Dubai, they went back home. Or maybe these people are, I don't know, there's a laundry that opened. Was not true. Those people were still in Dubai. Those people they didn't have a new laundry around. We tried to really we had all sort of hypotheses. Then after calling that cluster and really like spending time understanding that cluster, and again, all it requires is 1 hour per day before you start your day to have 1 hour where you talk to customers. We understood that it was not because we broke one shirt or because we just lost one shirt. It was not because a laundry opened in the area. It was not because they moved out of Dubai. It was because of something that we could never imagine. And that insight made us like a big chunk of our growth came from like that 20% effort. Why? Because those Jumeirah Janes, they started to become extremely aware of the plastic pollution problem around the world. What happened is that what happened is that basically when they start seeing that with Washman we had like a lot of plastic material coming as a byproduct of your order, they started feeling guilty about using Washman. So they stop using Washman because what they would say is like, man, this is like producing the amount of plastic that is producing for a shirt is ridiculous. So then the ball was on our corner. How do we solve this issue for that cohort of customer that is extremely valuable?
Yeah.
And this is exactly the same thing that specifically works during a pandemic or during when market conditions are extremely volatile, that you don't really understand the market. Simply what happens with COVID-19 is simply that. It's simply that you don't understand the market anymore because the rules of the game has changed. So now, if you're a founder and you're telling me you don't have time to understand the new rules of the game, then you're a founder that is probably destined to fail.
Okay, so pick up the phone and call your customer, even if it should be like 10 clients, 10 most valuable clients, and it will give you probably the insights you need now.
It will give you, if it doesn't give you insights, at least it's going to give you ideas to solve a problem that you might not be 100% aware of.
Got it. Okay. In principle, you're speaking about churn, which we already covered in this conversation. What would you say if I'm absolutely new business? Let's say I'm a startup which opened in February this year, so I don't really have enough data to kind of manage the churn and see what's happening, because I didn't even have time to start. Is there something I can do? Is there something I can still learn from your playbook?
Yeah, definitely. So that is comes back to something that we call like principle number 3, which is build targeted audiences. So before you have a business, the best way to be in business in 2020 is to build an audience first and then to sell to them. So if you're launching right now, you're not going to go, you can't expect to start selling right off the door. You need to build an audience first. Building an audience, what does that mean? Again, go back to customer centricity. Understand your customer market. Who is your market? Once you understand what is your core market, start creating a community around those markets. Start to create an audience. So what does that mean? It means start interviewing them. I don't know if now I would start like, let's say, a new line for sea fishermen. Okay? Like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. I want to sell like a Shopify store that is extremely focused on fishermen, experienced fishermen that go out at sea to fish, whatever, in sea. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start understanding, okay, who are the top guys out there in sea fishing? There's this guy called Mark Jones, who I don't know, caught the biggest sea fish in the freaking history. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pick up the phone, pick up LinkedIn, whatever that is. I'm gonna do a podcast, exactly the same way you're doing right now. So I'm going to just interview him. I'm going to try to understand him. Then I'm gonna ask him, who else do you think I should interview? And then this person will probably introduce you to someone else, and then so on. And then you start really by talking to them. You're doing two things. First of all, you are gaining expertise from someone that has like 30, 40, 50 years in the business. So the things like 1 hour conversation with someone that has 50 years in the business, or that's like extremely good at it, that is like a black belt, in 1 hour, you get a condensed offload of all their knowledge. Not all of their knowledge, but you get a sense of it. And this is if you do it in 1 hour. Imagine if now you do like, I don't know, 20 podcasts, 20 different episodes. In 20 different episodes, you would first of all gather so much knowledge about the market, about the end user, but you would also understand the who's who in the industry. And then you'll understand what are the key pain across all these influencers or all these key opinion leaders that you interviewed. And plus, it's going to create for you thought leadership on your target audience, because guess what? People that are following Mark Owens, like this big fisherman, then see that you've interviewed him, and then they're going to follow the friend of Mark Owens, and you've interviewed him, and then they're going to, I don't know, take the friend of Mark Owen, and well, you interviewed him as well. So you're going to be exactly where your core audience is. Once you have that, then you can ask your core audience their email, and then you can start getting like either an email list or like an Instagram page or whatever, just to build a gated community of like-minded people where you are not allowed to sell. You're not allowed to sell first, and then once you have a product perfected and that you have built a significant audience, that's when you start monetizing that audience.
Got it. And yeah,
It takes a bit more time than just like turning on the ads. But the problem of turning on the ads manager, well, right now I would not advise you because there's no one buying. But in general, is that then because the ads manager gets there you faster, you don't do this groundwork, which is the base of your business. Because if you have an organic audience that is very strong, your business is rock solid. Meaning that if Facebook bans your account, like your ads manager account, you still have a business.
true. And this can happen any day. Now, I would definitely agree that podcast is a good way to do, and having conversation with smart people all around the market is something I enjoy, and that's why we have you here today. So thank you very much, Nelio.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Speaking with Nelio is always fun. He's full of energy and ideas, and he easily spreads it around. Go to this episode's show notes at j.co/podcast to get the link to the pandemic marketing playbook we spoke about. And most importantly, open your calendar and see when you can call your first 2 or 3 customers this week. Ask how they are doing and see if there's anything you can do for them. Maybe this is not the time for hard sell, but it is a time to build long-lasting relationships. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Send us your feedback via email podcast@j.co or through our social media. On behalf of our producer Arshak Ismail, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you very soon.
This was the Dubai Business Podcast produced by Jayid. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and on social media at jayid.co/podcast. That's JAYID.co/podcast.